Hello, indie gamers. It's the ex-hardcore gamer. I'm sure you found yourself on more than one occasion playing a game and going, I'm having some fun and I like what it does, but there's also a lot of little weird quirks to it and some jankiness going on. Is today going to be another one of those occasions? Let's find out as I talk to you about Expedition Zero. Expedition Zero is a survival horror game that takes place in the middle of the forest in the heart of Siberia. As if Siberia wasn't hard enough to survive in on its own, now you also have to deal with a meteorite crash that has made flesh-eating creatures start to appear. You're gonna play as a Soviet engineer to go up against these monsters and do quests to try to solve the mystery as to what's going on in this forest. For years now, people have heard the term survival horror and thought of games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill. But now with Expedition Zero, it's going to be much more of a focus on the survival aspect. While you don't need to worry about food and water like most other survival games out there, there are other elements that you do need to be aware of. There is your personal battery that gets drained from using items like your headlamp, you have your stamina from running, and of course, being out in Siberia, you always have to worry about the cold. Also, like most survival games, you're going to start off with nothing, so immediately you have to start looking for items that will help you out. So essentially what you're going to be doing in the game is wandering through the forest and finding different old items that have materials inside them. They're going to be old mechanical and electrical parts that you then use inside 3D printers found throughout the forest. These printers will then give you items that will help you out. On top of all the gadgets that you'll be able to make, you also have a mechanized suit that can be upgraded to give you things like being able to hold in heat more or even generating some electricity on its own. Placement of these materials is different every time you play, and even if you die and come back to that area, it won't be the same. As you're wandering around the forest and exploring, you will be updating your map and it will show you all the different places that you found. So long as you keep surviving, you'll keep knowing where everything is. Sometimes you'll even have somebody that helps you out and he'll even give you coordinates to find new places to explore. Since materials and ammo are always scarce, this leads to a lot of risk-reward type gameplay. When fighting the creatures, you need to be conservative with your ammo. Make sure that you take the good shot and be able to take them out with less hits. Or maybe you want to run away. Or you could just use your pry bar instead, which doesn't have any ammo at all. Some other common scenarios are figuring out whether or not you want to use that wood to make a fire to warm you up just yet. Maybe you need to wait till you get to the next area just in case you don't find anything else. And when it comes to the materials, you might be able to build that item, but maybe there's a better item that you'll be able to be more successful with at the next 3D printer that you find. You see, each 3D printer is only designed to make certain items, so you have to go to a specific location to make it. It's not like other games where you'll know how to make something and you can do it anywhere. At the heart of Expedition Zero is just a lot of trial and error. You're not going to know what you can do and where you need to go until you finally discover it on your own. And while the game may be played from a first-person perspective, don't think of this as a first-person shooter. It's definitely more about the exploration and the survival, and the shooting does get a little clunky, but it's passable. So other than the passable shooting, there's also some other quirks that you'll have to deal with while playing Expedition Zero. If you're like me, you're used to games allowing you to pick up items using the E key, and while that's still the case here in this game, you have to hold it down instead of tapping it. This will lead you to sometimes thinking that you picked up an item when you haven't, or if you're using an alternate thing using the scroll wheel, you might think that you've already equipped it when really you've just picked it up. You'll notice that I mentioned using the E key and that I didn't mention anything about pressing a button, and that leads me to the next quirk. This is one of the latest PC games that does not natively support the controller, although you can play it through Steam remapping the keyboard to your gamepad. Unfortunately, while that sounds good in theory, in execution it doesn't work very well. No matter what you do to adjust the settings, the right analog stick never quite works right to replace the mouse. The sensitivity always seems off, and navigating through your inventory and materials is very cumbersome. On top of all that, all the on-screen prompts will be the keyboard keys and not at all your controller buttons. The controls work just fine when using a mouse and keyboard, and so that's nothing to be worried about, but I felt like it should be pointed out as I know there's a growing number of people that prefer to use a gamepad. I had some issues trying to wrap my head around the save system as well, as it didn't really seem all that clear when the game was saving for you. Whenever you find a new bed, that does set a new spawn point, and so obviously that would be the save, but the quick save seems to be at kind of random points. Sometimes it would be when I found a new area, and sometimes it was well into that new area. I would get a lot done, and then when I would die, I would respawn at a random point that really wasn't all that helpful to me. Since I couldn't really count on the game saving as often as I would like it to, I did find myself using some manual saves, but unfortunately when I would go to load them, it still wouldn't be at that point that I set it to save at, and it would be a bit beforehand. So it was really hard to know when exactly you'd be saving for. Also, sometimes I would load the save and I would have my health back, and sometimes I would load it and I wouldn't. It really didn't seem to have any kind of rhyme or reason, which led to points where I actually had to start the game all over because the point that it had me saved at, I would just die instantly every time. I think fans of the survival genre will be able to navigate through these quirks a lot better than I was, so I can't totally fault the game. It was just something that I had a little bit of trouble having to redo some parts I didn't want to. The graphics in the game are definitely impressive for something that comes from a small indie studio making a first-person game, but it's not without its problems as well. While my video card was 2 generations newer than the recommended video card, I found myself having lots of performance issues while I was trying to play through the game to review it. At first, when I started playing the game, I had it set to 1440p at mostly high to epic settings, and I was getting a consistent 60 to 80 frames per second. After playing for a bit of time though, the frame rate just dropped in half to about 30 to 40, and I wasn't able to get it to go back up no matter what settings I changed it to. I eventually dropped the game down to 1080p and everything ran fine from there, but I found this a bit strange that I would have this much trouble having 2 generations better than what they recommend. Just as I went to go record this review, there was a last-minute update that does seem to help improve the performance, but unfortunately I didn't get to spend enough time to really say for sure if that's the case. I really hope it is, and hopefully there will be even further optimizations that will go from there. Luckily, we have another highlight in the game in its fantastic sound design. I feel that a make it or break it aspect to any horror game will be its atmosphere, and the sound department is a big part of that. As you're walking through the forest, you'll hear the rustling of the leaves, the wind blowing, the cracking of ice as it gets colder, and obviously the creatures as they're sneaking up around you. I played wearing headphones and I found myself more than once actually kind of looking around and looking behind my back because it had me a little bit worried and spooked out. I think that's a definite sign of approval for this type of game. To go along with the great sound effects, there's also voice acting in the game, and none of it made me laugh or cringe, so that's also a good sign. It's pretty much the best that you can hope for this type of game. In the end, I feel that despite all its quirks and problems, that Expedition Zero does provide you with a great horror experience, so if that's something that you're looking for, it's well worth your time and effort to play. I've already seen some things get improved while reviewing it, and hopefully they'll continue to do those improvements and some of those pesky bugs and quirks can go away. And now I'd like to take the time to thank our indie warriors. Bill T, Christian Cruz, Kevalo, Adriana Amato, CJR, Julian Colbus, Jesse, CPM, Ray Lynn, Marky Mint, Dave Hart, Peekaboo, Lex Noyle, PSC, Carmine Red, King of the Hatch, and Blue Francis 14. I'd like to give an extra special thanks to our indie legends, Jen Rose, Larkison, Mitchell Hall, Eric, Peach, Skeptism, C. Coyle, Nathan Moore, and Chris Jackson. Thanks to everyone for all of your love and support for us here at I Dream of India. We couldn't do it without you. If anybody else would like to join them, all the information is in the description below. Till next time, thanks again for watching, and enjoy gaming.